After 20 years missing, mother tries to reunite with her grown kids. What happened at Christmas dinner shocked everyone. Hello, welcome, leave a like, subscribe, activate notifications, and enjoy this story. It had been 2 decades since anyone had seen or heard from her. A mother who once disappeared without a trace, leaving behind 2 young children who grew up believing they were abandoned. Now, 20 years later, she's back, standing on the doorstep of a life she no longer recognizes, desperate to reclaim the love she once lost. But as she prepares to face the children who became strangers, one question lingers. Can a mother ever truly come back after such a long absence? The answer lies in the most unexpected of places. Around a Christmas dinner table where old wounds are reopened, secrets are spilled, and nothing is as it seems. This reunion will change everything. As the tension builds and emotions run high, what unfolds in this family's most intimate moment will leave you breathless. Love, betrayal, and redemption intertwine in ways you'd never expect, leading to a revelation so powerful, it will haunt you long after the story ends. Don't miss a second of this heart-wrenching tale of a mother's desperate attempt to reconnect with the children she left behind, because what happens next will shock you to your core. The crisp December air bit at Laura's cheeks as she stood across the street from the modest 2-story house in Millbrook, Connecticut. Her heart raced, threatening to burst from her chest as she stared at the warm glow emanating from the windows. 20 years. 20 long, agonizing years since she'd last seen this place, since she'd last seen them. A sudden gust of wind rustled the bare branches of the maple trees lining the quiet suburban street, sending a shiver down Laura's spine. Or was it fear? The weight of 2 decades worth of guilt and longing pressed down on her shoulders, nearly buckling her knees. Lucas, Emily, she whispered, their names catching in her throat. As if summoned by her thoughts, a figure appeared in one of the upstairs windows. Laura's breath hitched. It was Emily, now a woman of 28, her silhouette unmistakable even after all this time. Laura's eyes drank in every detail, the graceful curve of her neck, the way she absent-mindedly tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, so like her younger self, yet undeniably changed. Laura's mind reeled back to that fateful night, the memory crashing over her like a tidal wave. "Mommy, where are you going?" 5-year-old Emily's sleepy voice pierced the darkness of the bedroom. Laura froze, her hand on the doorknob, a hastily packed bag at her feet. She turned, heart shattering at the sight of her little girl's confused face, Lucas's sleeping form in the bed beside her. I have to go away for a little while, sweetheart," Laura managed, her voice thick with unshed tears. "But I love you both so much. Never forget that. When will you be back?" Emily's lower lip quivered. Laura swallowed hard, knowing the cruel truth she couldn't speak. "I don't know, baby, but you be good for Daddy. Okay? Take care of your brother." She crossed the room in 3 quick strides, pressing a desperate kiss to Emily's forehead, then Lucas's. "I love you," she whispered once more before forcing herself to turn away, each step feeling like she was wading through quicksand. As Laura closed the front door behind her, a sob finally tore from her throat. The weight of the choice she'd just made threatened to crush her. But she had no other option. It was the only way to keep them safe. A car door slamming jolted Laura back to the present. Her eyes snapped to the driveway, where a tall man in a crisp suit was climbing out of a sleek black sedan. Lucas, her little boy, now a successful 30-year-old attorney. Laura's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. He looked so much like his father, the same strong jaw, the confident set of his shoulders. But there was a hardness to his features that hadn't been there before, a weariness around his eyes that spoke of pain carefully hidden away. As Lucas made his way up the front walk, Laura's feet seemed to move of their own accord. Before she could stop herself, she had stepped out from behind the tree where she'd been concealing herself. "Lucas," she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. He stopped dead in his tracks, his entire body going rigid. Slowly, achingly slowly, he turned to face her. The shock on his face was quickly replaced by a maelstrom of emotions. Disbelief, anger, hurt, and something else Laura couldn't quite name. For a long moment, neither of them moved, the air between them crackling with 2 decades of unspoken words. "Mom!" Lucas's voice was hoarse, as if the word had been forcibly dragged from somewhere deep inside him. Laura took a hesitant step forward, her arms aching to embrace the son she'd left behind. "Lucas, no." The single word cut through the air like a knife. Lucas's face had hardened into an impenetrable mask. "You don't get to do this. Not now. Not after all this time. Please," Laura begged, tears spilling down her cheeks. "If you'd just let me explain." "Explain." Lucas's laugh was bitter, devoid of any warmth. "Explain how you abandoned us? How you left 2 kids wondering what they did wrong? Why their mother didn't love them enough to stay?" Each word was a dagger to Laura's heart. She wanted to scream, to tell him the truth, that leaving had been the hardest thing she'd ever done, that not a day had gone by when she hadn't thought of them, ached for them. But before she could form the words, the front door flew open. Emily stood there, her eyes wide with shock as they darted between her brother and the woman she'd believed lost to them forever. "What's going on?" Emily's voice trembled. "Lucas, who..." Her words died as recognition dawned. "Oh my God, Mom!" The raw emotion in Emily's voice broke something inside Laura. She stumbled forward, desperate to close the distance between them. "Emily, sweetheart, I don't." Lucas's arm shot out, creating a barrier between Laura and her children. His eyes blazed with a protective fury. "You don't get to waltz back into our lives and act like nothing happened. We buried you, do you understand that? We mourned you." Laura flinched as if she'd been struck. "I know," she whispered, "and I'm so sorry. But there's so much you don't know. So much I need to tell you both." Emily had moved to stand beside her brother, her face a canvas of conflicting emotions. "Why now?" she asked, her voice small. "Why come back after all this time?" Laura took a deep breath, steeling herself for the bombshell she was about to drop. "Because the reason I left, the danger I was trying to protect you from, it's not over. And I can't keep you safe anymore without your help." The silence that followed was deafening. Lucas and Emily exchanged a look of disbelief and growing alarm. "What are you talking about?" Lucas demanded. "What danger?" Laura glanced around nervously, suddenly acutely aware of how exposed they were on the street. "I can't explain everything out here. Please, can we go inside? There's so much I need to tell you, and we don't have much time." For a moment, Laura thought Lucas would refuse. But then Emily placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Let's hear her out," she said softly. Lucas's jaw clenched, but he gave a curt nod. As they turned to head inside, Laura caught a glimpse of a car parked further down the street, its tinted windows concealing the driver. A chill ran down her spine. They were being watched. With a sense of both dread and determination, Laura followed her children into the house. The time for secrets was over. But as she crossed the threshold, she couldn't shake the feeling that, by coming back, she may have set in motion events that would change all their lives forever. The door closed behind them with a soft click, sealing them in with truths too long buried and dangers they couldn't yet comprehend. The game was about to begin, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The grandfather clock in the corner of the living room ticked loudly, its steady rhythm a stark contrast to the tumultuous emotions swirling through the room. Laura perched uneasily on the edge of an armchair, her eyes darting between Lucas and Emily. Her children, no longer children at all, sat stiffly on the couch opposite her, their faces masks of guarded anticipation. Lucas broke the tense silence first, his voice tight with barely contained anger. "Start talking." Laura took a deep breath, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "I know you must have so many questions, so much anger." "You're damn right we do," Lucas interrupted, his words sharp enough to cut. "Do you have any idea what it was like growing up without you? The birthdays, the graduations, every single day wondering why our mother didn't love us enough to stay." Emily placed a calming hand on her brother's arm, but her own eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "We thought you were dead, Mom. For years we held out hope that maybe. But then they found that body in the river. They told us it was you." Laura's heart clenched. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted you to go through that pain, but I had no choice. I had to make you believe I was gone." "Why?" Emily's voice cracked on the single word. Laura closed her eyes, summoning the courage to unveil the truth she'd kept buried for 2 decades. "Because someone was trying to kill me, and if I had stayed, they would have come after you too." The silence that followed was deafening. Lucas and Emily exchanged looks of disbelief and growing alarm. "What are you talking about?" Lucas demanded. "Who was trying to kill you?" Laura's gaze darted to the window, checking once again for any sign of the car she'd spotted earlier. "It's complicated and dangerous. Even now, I'm putting you at risk just by being here." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "What I'm about to tell you will sound crazy, but I need you to listen. Your father, he wasn't who you thought he was." Emily's brow furrowed. "Dad? What does he have to do with this?" Laura took a shaky breath. "Everything. Your father was involved with some very dangerous people. People who would stop at nothing to protect their secrets." Lucas scoffed, rising to his feet in agitation. "This is insane. Dad was a high school history teacher. For God's sake." "That was his cover," Laura insisted. "In reality, he was working for a covert government agency. I didn't know the full extent of it until it was almost too late." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Emily's face had gone pale, while Lucas paced the room, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Let's say for a moment we believe this ridiculous story," Lucas said, his lawyer's mind clearly working overtime. "Why didn't you go to the police? Why disappear and let us think you were dead?" Laura's eyes filled with tears. "Because they had infiltrated the police, Lucas. There was nowhere safe for me to turn. The only way to protect you both was to vanish completely, to make everyone, including the people after me, believe I was truly gone." Emily leaned forward, her voice trembling. "But why come back now? After all this time?" Laura's expression grew grave. "Because I've learned that the danger isn't over. In fact, it may be worse than ever. And this time, I can't protect you on my own." The room fell silent once more, broken only by the relentless ticking of the clock. Lucas and Emily exchanged looks, a lifetime of shared experiences and unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, Emily spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you need us to do?" Lucas whirled on his sister. "Emily, you can't seriously be considering." "She's our mother, Luke," Emily interrupted, a hint of steel in her tone. "Whatever's happened, whatever the reason, she's still our mom. We owe it to her to at least hear her out." Laura's heart swelled with a mixture of pride and sorrow. Her little girl had grown into such a strong, compassionate woman. Lucas's jaw clenched, conflict evident in every line of his body. After a long moment, he sank back onto the couch. "Fine, tell us everything." Laura nodded, steeling herself for the difficult conversation ahead. But before she could begin, a sharp crack split the air. In an instant, the window behind her exploded in a shower of glass. "Get down!" Laura screamed, diving to the floor and pulling Emily with her. Lucas reacted on instinct, dropping behind the couch as another shot whistled over their heads. As they huddled on the floor, hearts pounding and ears ringing, Laura's worst fears were confirmed. The past had caught up with them, and now her children were squarely in the crosshairs. The game wasn't just beginning, it had already begun. The days following the shooting passed in a blur of police statements, shattered nerves, and unanswered questions. Laura had disappeared again, leaving Lucas and Emily reeling from her brief, explosive re-entry into their lives. The authorities dismissed the incident as a random act of violence, but the siblings knew better. Their mother's warnings echoed in their minds, leaving them constantly looking over their shoulders. As Christmas Eve approached, Lucas and Emily found themselves going through the motions of their annual traditions, the weight of unspoken truths hanging heavily between them. They had agreed not to tell anyone about Laura's return. Not even their father, who had remarried years ago and moved to Florida. The sun was setting on Christmas Eve when Emily's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I need to see you both. Christmas dinner. 7 p.m. The old diner on Route 9. Come alone. L." Emily's hand shook as she showed the message to Lucas. His face hardened, jaw clenching in barely contained anger. "We're not going," he said flatly. Emily bit her lip, conflicted. "Luke, what if she really is in danger? What if we are too?" "It's probably a trap," Lucas argued, pacing the kitchen. "For all we know, she could be working with whoever shot at us. Or she could be trying to protect us." Emily countered softly. "Don't you want answers?" The siblings locked eyes, years of shared pain and confusion passing between them. Finally, Lucas sighed, shoulders sagging in defeat. "Fine, but we do this my way." The neon sign of Mel's Diner flickered weakly in the gathering darkness as Lucas pulled into the nearly empty parking lot. The vintage eatery, a relic of the 1950s, stood as a lonely sentinel on the outskirts of town. "I don't like this," Lucas muttered, scanning the area for any signs of a threat. Emily squeezed his hand reassuringly. "We're in this together, remember?" As they pushed open the door, the cheerful jingle of bells seemed jarringly out of place. The diner was deserted save for a solitary figure in a corner booth, face obscured by a menu. "Laura." She looked up as they approached, her eyes widening with a mixture of relief and apprehension. "You came," she breathed. "Start talking," Lucas demanded as they slid into the booth across from her. "No more games, no more vague warnings. We want the truth. All of it." Laura nodded, taking a shaky breath. "You deserve that. But first we should order. It'll look less suspicious." A weary-looking waitress shuffled over, notepad in hand. They placed their orders, turkey dinners all around, a pitiful approximation of the Christmas feast they should have been sharing. As soon as the waitress retreated, Laura leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "What I'm about to tell you will sound insane, but I need you to listen. Your father was a secret agent." "Yeah, we got that part," Lucas interrupted sarcastically. "What we don't get is why that meant you had to abandon us for 20 years. Laura flinched at the harshness in his tone. "It wasn't just that he was an agent. It's what he discovered. There's a group deeply embedded in the highest levels of government and corporate America. They call themselves the Architects. Your father stumbled onto evidence of their existence, of the lengths they'd go to protect their power." Emily's brow furrowed. "What kind of evidence?" "Blackmail material, financial records, proof of assassinations." Laura's voice dropped even lower. "But most damning of all, he found out about their ultimate plan. Something they called Project Rebirth." Lucas scoffed. "This sounds like the plot of a bad spy movie." "I wish it were," Laura said grimly. "But it's all too real. Your father, he tried to go public with what he knew. That's when they came after us." The arrival of their food provided a momentary interruption. As soon as the waitress was out of earshot, Emily leaned in. "So why did you leave? Why not take us with you?" Laura's eyes filled with tears. "Because they threatened you. They said if I didn't disappear, if I didn't convince everyone I was dead, they'd..." Her voice broke. "They showed me pictures of you sleeping in your beds. They knew everything about your routines, your friends. I had no choice." The weight of her words settled over the table like a shroud. Lucas stared at his plate, fork clenched tightly in his fist. Emily reached out, hesitantly taking her mother's hand. "Why come back now?" she asked softly. Laura's expression grew grave. "Because Project Rebirth is nearing its final stages. And your father, he left something behind. Something that could expose everything." Lucas's head snapped up. "What are you talking about?" "A failsafe," Laura explained. "Information hidden away, set to be released if certain conditions were met. I thought it was lost, but I've recently learned it still exists. And it's tied to both of you." The siblings exchanged bewildered looks. "Us?" Emily echoed. "How?" Before Laura could answer, the diner's door chimed. A man in a dark suit entered, his hand reaching ominously into his jacket. Laura's eyes widened in terror. "We have to go. Now!" But as they scrambled to their feet, more suited figures appeared at the windows. They were surrounded. Laura grabbed her children's hands, her voice urgent. "Listen to me. Whatever happens, you need to find the key. It's hidden in." The windows exploded inward in a hail of gunfire. Screams filled the air as Laura shoved Lucas and Emily to the floor. "Run!" she yelled, positioning herself between her children and the approaching danger. As chaos erupted around them, Lucas and Emily locked eyes, a lifetime of questions reflected in their gazes. In that moment, they realized their lives would never be the same. The truth was out there, hidden in the shadows of their past. And now, whether they wanted it or not, they were part of a dangerous game with stakes higher than they could have ever imagined. The deafening echo of gunshots still rang in Lucas and Emily's ears as they huddled behind an overturned table, hearts pounding wildly. The once quaint diner had transformed into a war zone in a matter of seconds. Shattered glass crunched underfoot as dark-suited figures swarmed the building. "We have to get out of here," Lucas shouted over the chaos, his protective instincts kicking into overdrive. He scanned the room frantically, searching for an escape route. Emily's eyes were wide with terror, her gaze fixed on the spot where their mother had last stood. "But Mom, Emily, look at me." Lucas gripped his sister's shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. "We can't help her if we're dead or captured. We need to move. Now." With a shaky nod, Emily allowed Lucas to pull her towards the kitchen. They crawled through the debris, the acrid smell of gunpowder burning their nostrils. As they reached the swinging doors, a familiar voice cut through the mayhem. "Stop!" Laura's command rang out, silencing the gunfire. "I'll go with you. Just let my children go." Lucas and Emily froze, exchanging a look of anguish. Every fiber of their being screamed to go back, to protect the mother they'd only just found again. But Laura's earlier words echoed in their minds. "Whatever happens, you need to find the key." With heavy hearts, they pushed through the kitchen doors, racing towards the back exit. As they burst into the cold night air, the sounds of struggle resumed behind them. "This way," Lucas urged, leading Emily towards a cluster of trees bordering the parking lot. They ran until their lungs burned, until the diner was nothing more than a distant glow on the horizon. Finally, in a small clearing, they collapsed to the ground, gulping in ragged breaths. For a long moment, neither spoke, the weight of what had just transpired settling over them like a suffocating blanket. Emily broke the silence first, her voice trembling. "Luke, what just happened? Who were those people? And Mom? Oh God, what have they done to her?" Lucas ran a hand through his hair, his mind reeling. "I don't know, Em, but it looks like everything she told us. It wasn't just some crazy story. This is real. What do we do now?" Emily asked, fear and uncertainty etched across her face. Lucas's jaw set with determination. "We find that key. Whatever it is, whatever it unlocks. It's clearly important enough for people to kill over. It might be our only chance to save Mom and figure out what the hell is going on." As the adrenaline began to fade, the full impact of the night's events crashed over them. Emily's shoulders began to shake with silent sobs. Lucas pulled his sister close, his own eyes stinging with unshed tears. "I can't believe she's been alive all this time," Emily whispered. "All those years we thought, and now we might lose her again." Lucas swallowed hard, pushing down his own swirling emotions. "We won't," he said firmly. "We're going to figure this out, Em. Together." As the siblings clung to each other in the darkness, their minds raced with unanswered questions. What was this mysterious key? How were they connected to it? And most pressingly, where do they even begin to look? A twig snapped nearby, jolting them back to their precarious reality. "We can't stay here," Lucas said, helping Emily to her feet. "We need to find somewhere safe, somewhere we can regroup and start piecing this together." Emily nodded, wiping away her tears. What about Dad? Should we try to contact him? Lucas hesitated. I don't know if that's safe. If what Mom said is true, we don't know who we can trust. As they cautiously made their way out of the woods, a new determination settled over them. The search for answers had begun, but with it came a chilling realization: their normal lives were over. They were now players in a dangerous game, one with rules they didn't fully understand and enemies lurking in the shadows. Back at the diner, as police sirens wailed in the distance, a single figure emerged from the chaos. Laura, battered but alive, slipped away into the night. Her children were safe for now, but the clock was ticking. The architects were closing in, and the race to uncover the truth had only just begun. In the coming days, Lucas and Emily would be forced to confront painful truths about their past, question everything they thought they knew, and push themselves to limits they never imagined. The key to unraveling it all lay hidden, waiting to be discovered. But with each step closer to the truth, the danger would only grow. The Christmas they had once known, filled with warmth, family, and simple joys, now seemed like a distant memory. In its place stood a stark reality. Their family's secrets had the power to shake the very foundations of society, and it was up to them to decide what to do with that knowledge. As they disappeared into the night, one thing became crystal clear. This was only the beginning of their journey, a journey that would test their bond as siblings, challenge their beliefs, and ultimately determine the fate of not just their family, but potentially the entire nation. The game was afoot, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The first rays of dawn were just beginning to streak across the sky as Lucas and Emily huddled in a cheap motel room on the outskirts of town. They had spent the night constantly on the move, paranoia driving them to switch locations several times. Now, exhausted and shell-shocked, they faced the daunting task of separating truth from fiction. Lucas paced the small room, his lawyer's mind working overtime. "Okay, let's break this down," he said, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "What do we actually know for certain?" Emily sat cross-legged on one of the beds, her nurse's scrubs from the previous day rumpled and stained. "Mom's alive," she said softly, still struggling to process that reality. "She claims Dad was some kind of secret agent, and that he uncovered something big enough to get him killed and force her into hiding. Right?" Lucas nodded, grabbing a notepad from the nightstand. "And now there's some kind of key that we're supposedly connected to, which could expose this whole conspiracy." As Lucas jotted down notes, Emily's brow furrowed. "But Luke, how can we be sure any of this is true? I mean, it sounds completely insane." Lucas paused, his pen hovering over the paper. "The shooting at the diner was real enough," he said grimly. "Whatever's going on, people are willing to kill to keep it secret." A heavy silence fell over the room as the gravity of their situation sank in. "We need more information," Emily said finally, her voice gaining strength. "Mom mentioned Dad left something behind, a failsafe. Maybe there are clues at the old house." Lucas nodded slowly. "It's risky, but it might be our best lead. We'll need to be careful, though. If those men from the diner are still looking for us." He didn't need to finish the thought. The memory of shattering glass and gunfire was still painfully fresh. As they prepared to leave, Emily's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her face paling. "Luke, it's Dad." Lucas tensed. "Don't answer it. We don't know if his phone is secure." Emily bit her lip, staring at the screen. "But what if he knows something? What if he's in danger too?" The phone continued to buzz insistently. Lucas and Emily locked eyes, years of trust and shared experiences passing between them. Finally, Lucas nodded. Emily answered, putting the phone on speaker. "Dad? Emily? Thank God." Their father's voice crackled through the line, tight with worry. "Are you and Lucas all right? I saw the news about the shooting at Mel's. They're saying it was some kind of gang violence, but I know better." "She's back, isn't she?" The siblings exchanged a startled look. "Dad, what do you know about this?" Lucas demanded. There was a heavy sigh on the other end of the line. "More than I ever wanted to. Listen to me carefully. You can't trust anyone right now, not even me. but there's something you need to find. Do you remember the old treehouse in the backyard? Emily's eyes widened. The one you built for us when we were kids? Yes, their father confirmed. There's a loose floorboard in the far corner. Under it, you'll find a key to a safety deposit box. Whatever you do, don't let anyone else get their hands on it. Dad, what's going on? Lucas pressed. Who are these people after us? What did you and Mom get involved in? I can't explain everything now, their father said urgently. It's not safe. Just find the key and… The line suddenly went dead. Dad? Dad? Emily cried, but there was only silence. Lucas and Emily stared at the phone, then at each other, a mix of fear and determination in their eyes. We need to get to that treehouse, Lucas said firmly, as they gathered their meager belongings and prepared to leave the relative safety of the motel. Both siblings knew they were diving headfirst into a web of secrets and lies. The truth about their family, and the dangerous knowledge their parents had been protecting, lay hidden in the remnants of their childhood. With each step towards their old home, the stakes grew higher. Unbeknownst to them, multiple factions were now converging on Millbrook, all seeking the key that could unlock a conspiracy decades in the making. For Lucas and Emily, the search for answers was just beginning. But as they would soon discover, some truths come at a terrible price. And in a game where no one can be trusted, even family ties might not be strong enough to withstand the storm that was coming. The old Williams family home loomed before them, a silent sentinel holding the secrets of their past. Lucas and Emily approached cautiously, every rustle of leaves and distant car engine setting their nerves on edge. The once familiar neighborhood now felt alien and potentially hostile. I can't believe we're doing this, Emily whispered as they slipped into the overgrown backyard, breaking into our own childhood home. Lucas's jaw was set in grim determination. We don't have a choice. Whatever's in that treehouse might be our only chance to find Mom and unravel this whole mess. The rickety wooden structure still clung to the massive oak tree, weathered by years of neglect. As they climbed the unsteady ladder, memories flooded back, summers spent imagining adventures, winters huddled under blankets sharing secrets. How fitting that their greatest adventure, their darkest secret, would lead them back here. Inside the treehouse, dust motes danced in the shafts of early morning light filtering through the cracks. Lucas immediately began prying at the floorboards in the far corner while Emily kept watch. I think I've got it, Lucas grunted, finally lifting a warped plank. His hand disappeared into the dark space beneath, emerging moments later clutching a small, tarnished key. Emily's eyes widened. That's it? After everything, it's just a normal-looking key. Before Lucas could respond, a car engine rumbled to life nearby. They froze, exchanging alarmed glances. We need to go, Lucas whispered urgently. Now. They scrambled down the ladder, hearts pounding. As they reached the bottom, a figure stepped out from behind the house. Both siblings instinctively reached for weapons they didn't have. Well, a smooth voice drawled. The prodigal children return. The man before them was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his silver hair neatly combed. Despite his genial smile, there was a coldness in his eyes that sent chills down their spines. Who are you? Lucas demanded, subtly positioning himself in front of Emily. The man's smile widened. An old friend of your parents. You can call me Mr. Graves. I'm here to help you understand the gravity of your situation. Emily's eyes narrowed. You're with them, aren't you? The people who shot up the diner. Graves said softly. Such a regrettable incident. But necessary, I'm afraid. Your mother has been uncooperative. We had hoped you two might be more reasonable. Where is she? Lucas growled, his fists clenching at his sides. Safe for now, Graves replied coolly. Her continued well-being depends entirely on your next move. His gaze flickered to Lucas's clenched fist. I believe you have something that belongs to us. Emily stepped forward, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. It doesn't belong to you. Our father left it for us. Graves sighed, as if dealing with petulant children. Your father was a fool who thought he could change the world. All he managed to do was put his family in danger and force your mother into hiding for 2 decades. Do you really want to follow in his footsteps?" The words hit like physical blows, doubt creeping into both siblings' minds. Graves pressed his advantage. "Think about it. You could walk away right now. Return to your lives, your careers. We can make all of this go away, including the charges that would inevitably follow the incident at the diner." Lucas and Emily exchanged uncertain glances. The temptation to return to normalcy, to pretend none of this had ever happened, was almost overwhelming. But then Emily's expression hardened. "And what happens to Mom if we walk away?" Graves' smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm afraid Laura made her choice long ago." In that moment, everything crystallized. Lucas's grip on the key tightened. "No deal," he said firmly. "Whatever our parents were involved in, whatever this key unlocks, we're seeing it through." Graves' pleasant demeanor vanished, replaced by cold menace. "I had hoped you'd be smarter than this. You have no idea what you're up against." As if on cue, 2 black SUVs screeched to a halt at the curb. Men in dark suits poured out, weapons drawn. "Last chance," Graves warned. "Give us the key, or things get very unpleasant for everyone." Lucas and Emily stood their ground, a lifetime of sibling solidarity evident in their united front. "Go to hell," Emily spat. What happened next was a blur of motion and sound. A smoke grenade arced over their heads, billowing acrid clouds. Gunshots rang out, but not from Graves' men. From somewhere behind them, a familiar voice shouted, "Run!" Through the chaos, they caught a glimpse of their mother, Laura, crouched behind a car, providing covering fire. Without hesitation, Lucas and Emily sprinted towards her. As they dove into a waiting vehicle, tires squealing as they peeled away from the scene, the full weight of their decisions settled upon them. There was no going back now. They had chosen truth over safety, family over self-preservation. But as the adrenaline faded and the reality of their situation set in, both Lucas and Emily realized the true price of that choice. Their normal lives were over. They were now fugitives, caught in a war they barely understood. The key clutched in Lucas's hand suddenly felt impossibly heavy. Whatever secrets it unlocked, whatever conspiracy it revealed, one thing was certain: their lives would never be the same again. The search for the truth had only just begun, and the cost would be higher than they could have ever imagined. As they sped away from their childhood home, leaving behind the last vestiges of their old lives, Lucas and Emily steeled themselves for the challenges ahead. The game had changed, the stakes raised to unimaginable heights, and somewhere in the shadows, the mysterious architects were undoubtedly preparing their next move. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered. But with each step closer to unraveling the mystery, the danger only grew. For Lucas and Emily, the real test was just beginning. The safe house was a nondescript cabin nestled deep in the Adirondack Mountains. As Laura ushered Lucas and Emily inside, the weight of their situation settled heavily upon them. The siblings collapsed onto a worn couch, exhaustion and adrenaline warring for dominance. "We don't have much time," Laura said, her eyes constantly darting to the windows. "They'll have tracked us here soon enough." Lucas held up the key, its metal glinting in the dim light. "Mom, what is this? What does it unlock?" Laura's face was a mask of conflicting emotions: relief, fear, and a steely determination. "It's the key to everything, to exposing the entire conspiracy." "Your father." Her voice caught. He knew the risks, but he believed the truth had to come out, no matter the cost. Emily leaned forward, her nurse's instincts kicking in as she noticed the way Laura favored her left side. "You're hurt," she said softly. Laura waved off her concern. "It's nothing. We have more pressing matters." She turned to Lucas. "The key opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank in Albany. Inside is a hard drive containing all the evidence your father gathered on the architects and Project Rebirth." "What exactly is Project Rebirth?" Lucas pressed, his lawyer's mind already cataloging the potential legal implications. Laura's expression darkened. It's a plan to reshape society from the ground up. The architects believe they can create a perfect world by controlling every aspect of people's lives. From the media they consume to the very thoughts in their heads. Emily gasped. That's monstrous. And it's closer to becoming reality than you can imagine, Laura continued. The technology exists. They've been testing it in small communities, fine-tuning their methods. If they succeed, the implications hung heavy in the air. Lucas stood, pacing the small cabin. So we get the hard drive, and then what? Go to the press? The authorities? Laura shook her head. It's not that simple. The architects have people everywhere. We need to be strategic about how we release the information. Suddenly, the cabin's ancient radio crackled to life. A familiar voice filled the room, their father's. Laura, kids, if you're hearing this, it means you've found the key. I'm sorry for everything I've put you through, but you need to understand the stakes. The evidence on that hard drive isn't just damning, it's world-changing. But it's also incomplete. The three exchanged worried glances as the recording continued. There's one final piece of the puzzle, something even the architects don't know about. The message cut off abruptly as the cabin's windows exploded inward. Smoke grenades rolled across the floor, filling the air with acrid fumes. Move! Laura shouted, pushing Lucas and Emily towards a hidden trapdoor. As they scrambled down into a narrow tunnel, gunfire erupted above them. They ran through the darkness, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind them. They emerged into a moonlit clearing, gasping for breath. A sleek helicopter sat waiting, its rotors already spinning. Get in! Laura yelled over the deafening noise. As they lifted off, a figure emerged from the trees, Mr. Graves. His usually immaculate suit now disheveled, a look of fury on his face. It's not over, he shouted, his words barely audible over the roar of the helicopter. You can't stop what's coming. As they soared into the night sky, Lucas and Emily clung to each other, the events of the past few days crashing over them. They had uncovered a truth beyond their wildest imaginings. But at what cost? Laura's voice cut through their thoughts. We're heading to Albany. It's time to finish what your father started. The siblings nodded, a mix of fear and determination etched on their faces. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. As the helicopter disappeared into the darkness, the final stage was set. The confrontation that would determine the fate of not just their family, but potentially the entire world, loomed on the horizon. In Albany, amidst the corridors of power and the shadows of conspiracy, the truth would finally be revealed. But as Lucas and Emily were about to discover, some truths come at a terrible price. And in a world where reality itself could be manipulated, distinguishing allies from enemies would prove to be their greatest challenge yet. The game was reaching its climax, and the stakes had never been higher. The first light of dawn was breaking over Albany as the helicopter touched down on the outskirts of the city. Laura, Lucas, and Emily moved swiftly through the quiet streets, their senses on high alert. The weight of their mission hung heavy in the air. The bank opens in an hour, Laura whispered as they approached the imposing facade of First National. We need to be in and out before the architects realize where we are. Lucas gripped the key tightly, his knuckles white. And then what? How do we expose all of this without putting ourselves in even more danger? Laura's eyes flickered with a mix of pride and sorrow. Your father had a plan for that too. There's a secure server set up to disseminate the information to trusted journalists and government officials simultaneously. Once we upload the data, there's no stopping it. As they rounded the corner to the bank's entrance, Emily suddenly grabbed her mother's arm. Wait, she hissed, pulling them into a nearby alley. Look! A group of men in dark suits stood clustered near the bank's doors, their earpieces and watchful gazes betraying their purpose. They're already here, Lucas muttered, his heart sinking. How did they know? Laura's expression hardened. They didn't. They're guarding all potential targets. We need a distraction. Before either of her children could respond, Laura stepped out of the alley, directly into the line of sight of the guards. "Hey boys," she called out, her voice dripping with false bravado. "Looking for me?" The reaction was instantaneous. The men converged on Laura, who took off running down the street. "Mom, no," Emily cried, but Lucas held her back. "This is our chance," he said urgently. "We have to take it." With heavy hearts, they slipped into the bank as soon as it opened, using the key to access the safety deposit box. Inside, they found not only the hard drive their father had mentioned, but also a sealed envelope addressed to them. As Lucas began the upload process on a nearby computer terminal, Emily tore open the letter with trembling hands. She read aloud, "My dear children, if you're reading this, then the worst has happened, and you've been dragged into a world I never wanted for you. I'm so sorry for the pain and danger I've brought into your lives. But you need to know that everything your mother and I did was to protect you and to fight for a future where you could live free from the manipulations of those who would control us all. The information you now possess is more than just evidence of crimes. It's proof of a fundamental threat to human freedom and dignity. The architects believe they can create a perfect world through control and manipulation, but they fail to see that it's our very imperfections, our struggles and choices, that make us human. I know I'm asking too much of you, but you're our last hope. Use this information wisely. Trust in each other and in the basic goodness of people when they're given the truth. I love you both more than you can ever know. Whatever happens, remember that your mother and I are so proud of the people you've become. All my love, Dad." Tears streamed down Emily's face as she finished reading. Lucas, his own eyes glistening, wrapped an arm around his sister's shoulders. "Upload complete." The computer chimed softly. A beat of silence passed, then chaos erupted outside. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer by the second. "We need to go," Lucas said urgently. "Mom's still out there." As they emerged from the bank, they were met with a scene of pandemonium. Police cars screeched to a halt, officers pouring out with weapons drawn. In the center of it all stood Laura, her hands raised in surrender, and beside her Mr. Graves, his face a mask of fury. "It's over, Graves," Laura called out, her voice carrying across the commotion. "The truth is out there now. You can't stop it." Graves' composure cracked, revealing the desperation beneath. "You fools," he snarled. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The world isn't ready for this kind of freedom. People need guidance, control." "No," Emily said, stepping forward. "What people need is the truth, and the chance to make their own choices." As if on cue, phones began buzzing all around them. The information was spreading, faster than anyone could have imagined. Graves lunged for Laura, but Lucas intercepted him, years of pent-up anger fueling his actions. In the ensuing scuffle, a gun was drawn. A shot rang out. Time seemed to slow as Laura threw herself in front of her children. She crumpled to the ground, red blossoming across her shirt. "Mom!" Lucas and Emily cried in unison, rushing to her side. As the police swarmed in, arresting Graves and his remaining associates, Laura looked up at her children, a soft smile on her face despite the pain. "I'm so proud of you both," she whispered. "You did it. You finished what we started." Tears fell freely as Lucas and Emily cradled their mother. After 20 years of absence, after days of danger and revelations, they were finally a family again, if only for these precious moments. In the days that followed, the world reeled from the revelations. The architects' conspiracy was exposed, governments and corporations were shaken to their core, and a global conversation about freedom, privacy, and the future of society ignited. Laura survived, though her recovery would be long and difficult. As she lay in her hospital bed, Lucas and Emily by her side, she looked at her children with a mix of love and regret. "I'm so sorry for everything you've been through," she said softly. "Can you ever forgive me for leaving?" Emily took her mother's hand. "We understand now, Mom. You did what you had to do to protect us." Lucas nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "And now we'll protect each other, as a family." As they sat together, reunited at last, they knew that the road ahead would not be easy. The world was changing, and they would play a part in shaping its future. But whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, bound by love, truth, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Outside the hospital window, the sun set on a world forever changed. The truth had come at a high price, but with it came the promise of a future where people could make their own choices, free from unseen manipulation. For Lucas and Emily, the journey that began with a shocking return and a Christmas dinner interrupted had led them to a place they never could have imagined. They had lost their innocence, but gained a deeper understanding of love, sacrifice, and the power of truth. As night fell, the Williams family held each other close, grateful for second chances and the redemptive power of forgiveness. They had faced their past, confronted painful truths, and emerged stronger for it. In the end, the greatest conspiracy had been unraveled not by governments or journalists, but by the unwavering love of a family determined to protect each other and fight for what was right. The game was over. The truth was out. And though the world would never be the same, for Lucas, Emily, and Laura, it was a new beginning, one filled with hope, healing, and the promise of a future they would shape together. Thank you very much for listening to this story. Comment below what you thought of the ending and from which city you're listening to us. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, click on the next story that's appearing on your screen now. Leave your like and subscribe to our channel so we can build a huge community that shares inspiring stories together. See you soon.